in 3 or so years, a number of you here this morning will no longer be here. I'm not talking about on this planet, or even in this part of the planet called St. Louis. I'm talking about here, in church. Some of you will just kind of slip away over those years. Perhaps some of you will have left because you got out of the habit of faith along the way. For others, urgent things got in the way of important things. Some perhaps because of lifestyle choices which seem to them to be incongruent to the practice of their faith. That's why they left. But many will leave because they will no longer find reasons to believe. Perhaps what they believe is clashing what they see in the lives of the leaders of our church, your bishops and your priests. For many, it's the question of suffering that does not go away. Perhaps it's what you're reading that does not agree with what you have been taught as a child about faith or about God. And as you try to move from the faith of your childhood to a more adult faith that you can own now for yourself, none of us can simply accept our parents' faith. And to learn how to make our parents' faith our own, if it even begins to work, can be a harrowing process. And healthy religion is as much a progressive unlearning of false ideas about God as it is the learning of true ideas about God. Perhaps in large part because of the number of books trumpeting what they've come to call the new atheism. In the last 7 years, the number of American citizens who know and observe a higher power has dropped a whopping 13%, according to a new international survey. Those self-identifying as atheist is now 5%. 5% doesn't seem like much, except that it was only 1% just 5 years ago. In today's gospel, Jesus faces the loss of faith of so many he loved. Just as is true of you who are parents and grandparents, you face the same thing sometimes in your kids and grandchildren. Or you whose spouses or friends or siblings no longer believe. Many parents here this morning dropping off their son or daughter for the first time in college worry, will they keep the faith while they're away at college? Perhaps you feel like your own faith is hanging by a thread. Facing that himself, Jesus asked them, "Will you leave me too? Will you also leave?" There are so many things I could imagine him wanting to say to them in that critical moment when he wondered, perhaps worried. Could you hang in there with the doubts? Don't you know that there's so much more to this universe than what you can see or touch or taste or reason or explain? Maybe the God you don't believe in is the very same God I don't believe in. But He did not break it down for them. He didn't offer them a God for dummies version just for them. Apparently, knowing this was something he himself and each of us too now have to wrestle with on our own, rather than some easy answers or some user-friendly faith. And did you notice that Jesus let them go? He made no attempt to stop them. Even though you can almost feel the heartbreak in that most poignant question, will you leave me too? The real miracle, my friends, is not that there were 5,000 there when he fed them with bread. The real miracle is that there was still a handful left at the end with him. A handful. There are questions that won't go away. Unanswerable questions. The truth is, there are paradoxes that we will have to wrestle with for the rest of our lives. Having said that, tell me something more worth your life. Tell me something more worth your soul. Tell me something worth more to the lives of the people you love most in this world than this. And besides, do you know what it could cost us? Do you know what is at stake in not believing? According to a recent study by the researchers at our own University of Missouri, there is a correlation between mental health, physical health, and faith. With an increased spirituality, they found, there is a lessening of self-centeredness and a greater sense of oneness and of connection. Greater sense of the characteristics that foster a deep sense of a global society that is based on the virtues of peace and of cooperation. What is at stake, my friends, is human flourishing now, in this world, and not just at the hour of our death. The price is high. That's precisely why we care. That's precisely why we're here. That's what matters to me. It's why I'd be sad if you leave too. But if that's your choice, you will never be shamed here. You will never be shamed here for your doubts or your questions or your loss of faith, ever. With this Jesus, we let you go with only a great love for you and respect for your choices. But I beg you, first come talk to us. Root your fears, concerns in this community. You don't have to figure this all out by yourself. And understand that painful letting go of how you always thought it had to be or who God is often the beginning of the birth of a deeper good. Something new that can break forth beyond the limits of how we used to think about life, about ourselves, about God, about real religion. Such birthing is always painful, but it's so worth it. While faith does not come easy for me, I trust with all my heart that God lives. God lives. That the God of Jesus, who we know as love itself, is happening in this world. That God lives at Washington University and in every one of those classrooms over there, and in the dorms and in the dining halls. That God lives in the homes you leave behind today, or the homes where your son or daughter used to sit with you and talk and argue and complain and laugh. That God lives in that home where there's an empty space now that used to be full of so much life. That God lives with you as you drive home from here, leaving your son or daughter behind, knowing that they'll never know how much you love them, ever. And that the one who is love can be known in spite of the weaknesses of us entrusted to proclaim him, especially your priests and your bishops. Mine is the faith of Peter. With him I find myself saying again and again, to whom else shall we go? Look, I don't understand everything about God, nor am I meant to. I have plenty of unanswered questions. But I keep hanging in there with this mystery, trying to be present myself to true presence, because there's something about this that rings so true to me. And because it continues to bring out the best in me and in so many. And the grown-up faith might just be our best shot at a better world. And besides, where else would I go? There's life here in this faith, and there's therefore a reason for hope still in this world. I look around. I wonder in a few years who will be here still and who not. And the question Jesus asked hangs in the air, not with any condemnation in the least, but only great love. Will you leave me too?